Ayla Escara, these I recall. These I recall, and my soul melts with sorrow. For the bitter course of our history, tears pour from my eyes. The Martyrology section of the Musaf service traditionally focuses on those who died because they stayed true to their identities. Well, traditionally it focuses on those who stayed true to their Jewish identities and perished. A martyr is someone who suffers because they are who they are, because of what they believe in. When physicians take the Hippocratic oath, they vow to first do no harm. With this oath, they are putting their own lives at risk to help others. This afternoon, we wanted to focus on the martyrs of the COVID-19 pandemic, the almost 1,000 healthcare workers who have lost their lives in an attempt to save others. Ayla Escara, these I recall.
Ayla Escara, בנפשי עלי יש בך, על קורותינו המרות, עיני זולגות דמעה.
In the early days of this pandemic, Dr. Rebecca Shadowen asked her friends a question on social media. If you could save the life of another person without harming your own, would you? The infectious disease specialist at the medical center at Bowling Green in Kentucky was an early advocate for social distancing, hand washing, and mask wearing. But she was in a surrounding community that sparred over mask wearing and stay-at-home orders. While offering her expertise as a member of the Bowling Green, Warren County Coronavirus Work Group, she fell ill in May. She spent the next 4 months moving around area hospitals on a ventilator, going from one ICU to another. When she was lucid enough, she would continue working from her hospital bed, sharing what she knew about the virus that was ravaging her body. Dr. Shadowen was one of over 60,000 residents of Kentucky who contracted COVID-19, one of thousands of the states to die while fighting to keep others safe from it. Ayla Escara, these I recall.
Ayla Escara, בנפשי עלי יש בך, על קורותינו המרות, עיני זולגות דמעה.
Dr. Nurse Patricia Edwards was called Nurse Pat by her patients at Bon Secours St. Francis Hospital in Greenville, South Carolina, where she worked in the intensive care unit for 14 years. It was in that same ICU that she died on August 19th. She always chose to work the overnight shift, taking care of the sickest patients in the hospital during the most trying hours of the night. Her daughter referred to her as an old school nurse. She cared like no other nurse would care, her daughter said. She knew she was needed in the fight against the pandemic, and caring for these patients costed her her life. She's one of the over 138,000 South Carolinians to contract COVID-19, one of over 3,200 deaths in that state. Ayla Escara, these I recall.
Ayla Escara, בנפשי עלי יש בך, על קורותינו המרות, עיני זולגות דמעה.
Dr. Wretch Rudinger is one of almost 6,500 residents of Michigan to die at the hands of coronavirus. A spouse and a father. The 62-year-old was an internist with a primary care practice in Dearborn Heights. He was treating more than 25 patients with COVID-19 when he contracted the disease himself during the first week of April. He died on August 25th. He spent 30 years treating patients at Garden City Hospital. Treating those patients is what ended up killing him. Ayla Escara, These I recall.
Ayla Escara, ונפשי עלי יש בך, על קורותינו המרות, עיניי זולגות דמעה.
Longtime nurse Janine Pace Ponder died on July 17th at the age of 59. She worked as a nurse at the Sutter Alta Bates Summit Medical Center in Oakland, California. At many points, workers at the hospital did not have enough PPE, and she was treating both COVID-19 patients and non-COVID patients simultaneously. She was forced to reuse the same PPE, changing into and out of the PPE in one shift, alternating between patients, not knowing whether she was exposed along the way. She was exposed, and is one of the almost 800,000 residents of California to contract COVID-19, one of over 15,000 lives lost in that state. Ayla Escara, these I recall.
Ayla Escara, ונפשי עלי יש בך, על קורותינו המרות, עיניי זולגות דמעה.
Dr. Alicegulati was on the staff at Howard University Medical School, even at 91 years old when she passed away. She was an expert on substance abuse and served on the White House committees on substance abuse for Presidents Nixon, Ford, and Carter. She worked with DC's most vulnerable population, including sex workers and crack addicts. At the height of the AIDS epidemic, when most of society turned their backs to those suffering from AIDS, to those dying from AIDS, she would cradle AIDS patients in her arms at the hospital on their deathbeds, kissing them on their head so that they could die with dignity. She had suffered a stroke, was hospitalized, and contracted COVID-19 while in rehab. She hugged dying patients during the AIDS epidemic when no one else would, and no one was there to cradle her as COVID-19 took her life on April 30th. Ayla Escara, these I recall.
Ayla Escara, ונפשי עלי יש בך, על קורותינו המרות, עיניי זולגות דמעה.
Dr. Joseph Costa was a 56-year-old healthy man when he tested positive for COVID-19. He was the chief of critical care at Mercy Medical Center in Baltimore, Maryland, where he worked for 23 years. During this pandemic, he continued his work on the front lines, deeply committed to serving the hospital's patients. Colleagues described him as a steady presence. He always smiled, had your back, and told you like it was, with compassion. He died on July 25th, contracting the disease after treating patients with the same disease. He became a statistic, one of over 120,000 Maryland residents who tested positive for coronavirus, one of over 3,900 lives lost in the state. Mercy Medical Center announced they would rename the critical care unit in his memory, but that same unit could not save him in his time of need, the way he fought to save so many. Ayla Escara, these I recall.
Ayla Escara, ונפשי עלי יש בך, על קורותינו המרות, עיניי זולגות דמעה.
Dr. Adeline Fagan, 28 years old, was an OBGYN in Houston, Texas. starting her second year of residency at HCA Healthcare West in Houston. She mostly spent her time at the hospital delivering babies, but due to a spike in coronavirus cases, she began doing ER rotations as well to treat COVID-19 patients. There have been over 135,000 cases in the Houston area. Dr. Fagan was one of the many deaths. She was 28 years old when she passed away just last week on September 19th. The day she got sick, she delivered several babies. She helped bring life into the world before she died. Ayla Escara, these I recall.
Ayla Escara, ונפשי עלי יש בך, על קורותינו המרות, עיניי זולגות דמעה.
We mourn the over 200,000 deaths of this pandemic, members of our community, loved ones of our community, and those martyrs, those healthcare workers who sacrificed their lives to save the lives of others. We'll continue with the words of the Mourner's Kaddish in the sidebar of page 344. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah,
Amen.
Be'alma divarach chirutei ve'amlich malchutei, B'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala uvizman kari v'imru Amen.
Amen.
Yehi
Yehi
Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Leolam Omei Omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shemei Dekudsha B'richu
B'richu.
La'ela La'ela Mikol Birchata v'shirata Tushbechata v'nechamata Da'amiran be'alma ve'imru Amen.
Amen.
Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'chaim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'imru Amen.
Amen.
Oseh Shalom Bimromav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel Ve'imru Amen.
Amen.